You got 9 verses. Okay. Everybody see that? Okay. Now, I mentioned last week, and I didn't have a slide on this. They started putting tattoos on dolls about 20 years ago. Put the first one up there. That's a Barbie. That is a Barbie doll, and notice the dragon. See that dragon? Put the next one. There's Ken. He's got all that space stuff there. Just hold up, Carl.
Sorry, bring it up next
We'll go ahead and put it on there now. That's another Barbie. You see that devil head with wings? You got a bat. You've got, let's see, there's some other things. There's a cherub over there. That's the devil. Sun and moon, all that kind of stuff. The flames coming up off the skull. That's on a doll for kids.
Did somebody make that?
No, it comes that way. From the factory.
Be sure.
Yes, sir, I'm sure.
At least I showed them.
Now, like I said the other day, that was about 20 years ago to start doing that. Now, whether they still do it or not, I don't know. There was one little doll called Tabbouleh or something like that. I gave y'all the name last week. I forgot now what it was. Little bitty blonde doll, stood about that tall, had tattoos. Anyway, no wonder the kids want them. Put the next one up. Now this is a chart of tribal scarification among African tribes. They're all different. Different marks signify a different tribe. Put the next one. That's caused from scarring, cutting, and so on. Sometimes they'll put something under the cut and pull it together and it grows that way. Remember the guy we saw last week had the bumps going up his head? Okay, put the next one up. Now this is done with, in old times it was done with thorns or something like that. Now they use razor blades doing that. And notice the swastika, see that? Now this is an old picture here. Swastikas, the Germans, the Nazis didn't invent that. It's been in pagan religion for a couple thousand years. In fact, American Indians used it. Let's see, all right, give us the next one. Now, would anybody like to kiss that? That's the lower lip hanging there. So you bangy thing puts the thing in there and the earlobes. And I'm assuming that's a guy, I don't know. But whatever it is, if it wants to kiss you, what it does, it gets close and throws the lower lip around you and pulls you up. Can you imagine walking around all day with your lip dragging the ground?
I wonder where they ever got the idea to start this. That'd be a good idea.
It's religious. Whole thing's religious. All right, let's see some more scarification. Put another one on there. Now you notice this is artwork. Patterns and all that stuff. By the way, this guy combs his hair.
I saw one night.
Give me the next one. This is a picture from about 1910, 1915. Now, what they do, they cut each one of those things separately. They'll put ashes in the wound or something like that, cause it to swell up. And then when it heals up, you got the bump there. All right, give me the next one. Sometimes they do, sometimes they die from it. See what that guy did to his forehead and his chin? All right, let's go to the next one. See the patterns on that woman's head? Every one of those little bumps was a cut. All right, now there's a man on there. Say, look, put him up. He thinks he's disguised. See, he's got his eyes covered with his mask. That was a joke. Okay, let's see. What number is that? You got a number, Carl?
That's number 52.
Okay, thank you. Take that off the screen. 52. I'll make sure where it was. Now, before you put the next one up, let me tell you something. This is a picture of a child being scarified. They do it when they're small. This guy's cutting this kid with a razor blade, put him up there.
Oh.
By the way, tattoos do the same thing, just not as much blood. All right, put the next one up. Those are tribal scars. Remember that chart I showed you? 3 scars going here. This is one particular tribe. Notice how deep that scar went. Put the next one up. She's got the 3 down, 4 across. That's a particular tribe. 2 up by the eye, 3 there, and the other cheek's the same way. And notice how wide these scars are. Okay, that indicates a deep cut and a heel with it being open like that. Okay, I think hold on the next one, but I think the next one I've got an American with a tribal tattoo. Go ahead and put it up. Carl said this would be 3 at once.
That's that money sign, that green.
That's pretty, all right, put the next one up. Let's get back to our study. Major point number 1, mark of tattoos is blood. We looked at 2 things. Now we're looking at number 3. Tattoos originated with a satanic ritual of bloodletting. Bloodletting. Now, the verse we started with, if you remember, is Leviticus 19:28. He says, "You shall not make any cuttings in your flesh for the dead, nor print any marks upon you." Now, who said that? God said it. He finishes that verse with, "I am the Lord." Gives the authoritative emphasis to it. Now, I'm going to give you a few brief descriptions of tattoo procedure from pro-tattoo authors. These are people that promote tattooing, they believe in it, they like it, and all that stuff. And listen to some of the things they say. A book called The Body Art Book, a complete illustrated guide to tattoos, piercings, and other body modifications. Page 28, quote, "Early people, like those I showed you in some of the pictures, cut open their skin and rubbed ashes into the wounds to mark themselves. They punctured their skin with the bones and teeth of animals." End quote. Same book, page 97, quote, "You'll see little drops of blood emerge from the freshly tattooed spot. How much you bleed has a lot to do with your personal physiology as well as outside factors. Usually your blood will coagulate within a few minutes, clotting up the tiny punctures that have been made. When your tattoo is finished, the artist will clean it gently with an alcohol water solution. Once that dries and little blood bubbles have ceased rising to the surface, the artist may want to snap a few photos," end quote. So those of you that got your tattoos, you witnessed all that firsthand, right? Book called Tattooing and Body Piercing, page 22. "The tattooist guides the tattoo machine over the skin. He or she stops the needle every minute or so to wipe the blood and ink clean. The amounts of bleeding and pain in the tattoo process differ according to each person. After the first 2 hours, remove the bandage and wash away any collected or dried blood," end of quote. Bloodletting. You see that? That's what happens every time a person gets tattooed. Bloodletting takes place. In the book called Art, Sex, and Symbol, page 19, quote, "As soon as the tattoo artist stops working with the needle," now this particular paragraph is dealing with a sailor who got a tattoo of an eagle, and here's the description it gives. "As soon as he stops working with the needle, the sailor's skin sends up its blood beads. The eagle's eye reddens, but there's now no telling blood from ink. He floods the flesh," the tattoo artist floods the flesh behind the eagle with red, and the finished eagle poises on a red sky, born and baptized in the blood of its owner." End of quote. Baptized in the blood of its owner. A book called The History of Tattooing and Its Significance, page 233, quote, "The reasons why puncturing the skin should be regarded with some degree of awe are not far to seek. For in the first place, there is the drawing of blood, which to the savage world is full of significance as a rejuvenating and immortalizing factor. There is in addition the opening of numerous inlets for evil to enter," end of quote. You see, this stuff's religious. Rolling Stone magazine said this, quote, Evan Seinfeld, am I saying his name right? Basis for biohazard, sits in a chair, offers his hand, and waits for the bleeding to begin. The instrument whirs to life, humming across Seinfeld's hand, creating a vibrating pool of blood and ink. End of quote. When you get a tattoo, rubbing a little ink into the wound does not change the fact that you're cutting your flesh, in contradiction to Leviticus 28 that we read there. And it doesn't change the fact you're practicing bloodletting and Satanism in rebellion to the revealed Word of God. We read 3 different verses last time saying not to be cutting your skin. In Tattoo History, a source book, page 158, it's quoting Dr. W.D. Hambley, who's considered the world's expert on tattoos. It says, quote, Hambley concluded that historically, tattooing had originated in connection with ancient rites of scarification and bloodletting, which were associated with religious practices intended to put the human soul in harmony with supernatural forces and ensure continuity between this life and the next, end of quote. That's what's going on in 1 Kings 18 when the prophets of Baal are cutting themselves. And did you get that? He says tattooing in pagan belief is that it puts the person in contact with the other world.
Amen.
So there's no question it's associated with satanic and demonic bloodletting. In the book Tattoo History, a source book, page 181, quote, in Northwest Alaska, who would be inhabiting Northwest Alaska? Eskimos. In Northwest Alaska, traditional practices of tattoo and ritually induced bleeding were often related and overlapped to some extent. Around Bering Strait, shamans, what's a shaman? It's a witch doctor. Talking about witch doctors among the Eskimos. Around Bering Strait, shamans commonly performed bloodletting to relieve aching or inflamed parts of the body. That discussion came up last week about doctors who used to do bloodletting to deal with disease, which is what killed George Washington. So, commonly performed bloodletting to relieve aching or inflamed parts of the body. Nelson watched a shaman lancing the scalp of his little girl's head, the long, thin iron point of the instrument being thrust 12 to 15 times between the scalp and the skull. That's the identical technique for tattooing. That's what the tattoo machine does. It punctures under the skin, inject ink. He goes on to say, it is plausible that the release of blood functioned to appease various ills and spiritual manifestations. For instance, several St. Lawrence Islanders explain the importance of licking the blood that was released during tattoo operations, in a quote. Did you get that? It's associated with magic. It's associated with spiritual manifestations. Say, well, this is 21st century America. It wouldn't be that way here. Oh, yes, it is that way here. It's exactly that way here. Now, don't forget, those quotes are from pro-tattoo people. People that know it. Okay? It's not some Christian telling you what's wrong with it. A Christian can't justify cutting himself when all the evidence, even from the pagan world, points to Satanism.
Amen.
For the next one. Okay, major point number 2. Number 1 was the mark of tattoos is blood. The worship of tattoos is the devil. Okay, devils. John 4:22. Ye worship ye know not what. That fits all these pagans. So tattoos have always been associated with magic, with paganism, with demonism, with Baal worship, with shamanism, mysticism, heathenism, cannibalism, and just about every other ism you can think of. But it's never been associated with Bible-believing Christianity. Never has. And throughout history, wherever Christianity invaded the place, the tattoos left. Well, it's working the other way around now. The paganism is invading Christianity. And you got Christian tattoos. So we'll see about that a little later on. Why? Because late 20th century and on into now, you're dealing with lukewarm, mediocre, Laodicean Christianity. Not Bible-believing Christianity. Even in churches like ours, they have people in them that are not Bible-believing Christians. Oh, they'll claim the King James Bible, but saying this is the Word of God and believing it are two different things.
Amen.
So, Wherever you do any research, and I've done a lot of it, the history, the roots of tattooing never changes. It came from pagan roots, from paganism, pagan worships, always dealing with those kind of things. In some of the cultures, a tattooist is also a shaman. He's also a witch doctor. He's the magic man. He's a priest or maybe a priestess. In those African tribal cultures, that's what it was. That guy that was cutting on that kid is some sort of high up in the tribe. He's some sort of priest or witch doctor or something like that. The dictionary says this of a shaman. Quote, a shaman is an intermediary. What does that 10-cent word mean? Okay, somebody in between, go between. A shaman is an intermediator between the natural and supernatural worlds, using magic to cure illness, foretell the future, control spiritual forces, etc. So the guy that does that, does the scarification or the tattooing, he's an intermediary between the devil's world and this world. Yes, sir.
That like those channelers or whatever it is.
Same kind of thing, yeah. Yeah, intermediaryship. That's what psychics are supposed to be. Yes, sir?
We talk about how the devil has his counterfeits. I find it interesting that the mediator was scarred and had bloodletting.
He was scarred by pagans, polytheistic Romans. All right, let me give you some more non-Christian pro-tattoo quotes, and they prove this ungodly origin over and over. A book called The Exotic Art of Skin Decoration, page 73, quote, tattooing is often a magical rite in the more traditional cultures, and the tattooist is respected as a priest or shaman, end of quote. In the book I quoted a while ago, Art, Sex, and Symbol, page 64, in Fiji, Formosa, New Zealand, and in certain of the North American Indian tribes, tattooing was regarded as a religious ceremony and performed by priests and priestesses. In Tattoo History, a source book, page 158, quote, the actual tattooing process, which involved complex ritual and taboos. Taboos are things that you're not allowed to be involved in. And one of these other quotes will show why. Complex ritual and taboos could only be done by priests and was associated with beliefs which were secrets known only to members of the priestly caste, end of quote. So that goes back to Babylonianism, higher knowledge, all that stuff, cosmic knowledge, all that belonging from theosophy and all those cults and so forth. Freemasonry does the same thing. Those guys that get in on the ground floor usually don't make it past the third, what do they call it? Well, level's what it is, that's not what they call it.
Degree.
Third degree, thank you. Very few make it to the top, which is 33rd degree is the top, 32nd, 33rd. And the guys up there know it's Satanism. In fact, Albert Pike, 33rd degree, Freemason back in the 1800s, and one of their revered gurus made it very clear that Freemasonry is Luciferian in nature. What does that mean? Devil worship. Devil worship. And yet they'll tell you on the ground level there, they'll say, do you believe in God? Oh, yeah, I believe in God. Well, then you can be a Mason.
Amen.
Trouble is, it's the wrong God. In America, they'll have a Bible opened out on their altar when they do their rituals and stuff. In Muslim countries, they'll have the Quran opened up. See, it doesn't make any difference what it is. It's the wrong God wherever you're at. And that's the same thing here. He says associated priests associated with beliefs which were secrets. That's those taboos, and you can only know that when you get into the higher up. And by then you're so brainwashed that you're just ready to accept whatever's all about. So the tattooist, the shaman, the occult priest, whoever it is, many times in his mind, the tattoo is a point of contact between this world and the next world, and it's inlets, as one of them said, into the spiritual world. And it's what it said in that book, inlets for evil to enter. Well, that sounds like it's opening up for a devil to get in that person. So a tattoo is a whole lot more than just body decoration. It's a religious thing. It's more than just a layer of ink on your skin. Now, up until the 20th century, in every culture and every country, they used tattoos for pagan, spiritual, and religious invocations. What does that mean? It means you call up a god. Remember the witch of Endor? He said, what do you see there? She said, I see gods coming up out of the earth. Well, what she saw was devils. And that's what the incantation is about, is invoking a spirit being, okay? And even today, in a lot of countries, including our country, tattoo is believed to be a bridge between us and the supernatural world. Another book is called Power of the Witch, and this was written by a famous witch, Lori Cabot. She says, on page 301, quote, the origins of tattooing came from ancient magical practices, end quote. So all those different designs, they have magical ideas attached to them. The Total Tattoo book, page 17, quote, through the ages, tattooing had well-defined roles, making a rite of passage at a stage of life. So at a particular, all those African tribes, most Indian tribes, they have it when a kid is a certain age, they go through some ceremony to move them into adulthood, okay? You all know about a lot of those things. It usually happens when they're 12 or 13 years old. It's 12 years old in Catholicism. It's called confirmation. It says it's a rite of passage at a stage of life, calling the spirits proudly, defiantly, or sneaky, showing who you are via body art. That's pretty much how the tattoo tradition evolved, and it's pretty much the way it remains, in a quote, still today. In Tattoo History, a source book, page 90, many native tribes practiced therapeutic tattooing. The Ojibwa, which is another name for Chippewa Indians, for instance, tattooed the temples, forehead, and cheeks for those suffering from headaches and toothache. I wonder what they did, what the witch doctor did whenever they did all this tattooing, the guy still had the headache. I mean, they do it to get rid of the illness, right? And he goes on to say, the headaches and toothaches that were believed to be caused by malevolent spirits, that's hateful demons, songs and dances that were supposed to exorcise the demons accompanied the tattooing ceremony, end of quote. All those different markings for different tribes, that stuff is to protect that individual from negative spirits, evil spirits. Book Tattoo, The Exotic Art of Skin Decoration, page 8, quote, tattooing is about personalizing the body, making it a true home and fit temple for the spirit that dwells inside it. Hope it's the right spirit. Tattooing, therefore, is a way of keeping the spiritual and material needs of the body in balance, end of quote. So I guess if you don't have a tattoo, you're out of balance, right? Now, y'all don't get bored. I'll be through reading this in a few minutes, but I want our young people to see what the people that do these tattoos actually believe they're doing.
Amen.
Amen.
Tribal tattoos is one of the latest fads in tattooing. I mean, you see it all over the place. These black marks and this and that, and they don't have any significance to most people. Those are tribal markings they're putting on their body.
I've seen that before. I just thought the guy got cut or something. He was body spot. I've seen that on people.
It's not just Afro-Americans doing it either. There's a bunch of wannabes out there tattooing themselves. Tribal tattoos, the designs of those things, they have some very serious symbolic meanings, mystical, occult meanings associated with them, and they're considered, in the tribal tattoos, they're considered channels into spiritual and demonic possession. Who'd want to open a channel for a devil to possess you? In the book Tattoo, The Exotic Art, page 13, when the designs are chosen with care, tattoos have a power and magic all their own. They decorate the body, but they also enhance the soul, end of quote. More evidence of religious element there. Now, did you notice that if you choose the tattoo very carefully, that tattoo you've chosen has power and magic all its own, and enhances your soul. Another quote from Rolling Stone magazine is describing a famous tattoo artist. His name is Paul Booth. And it says that during his tattooing, when he's tattooing a client, it says, quote, he allows his client's demons to help guide the needle. This is a 20th century American, should have some sense. But he allows the client's demons to guide the needle.
Hey, preacher,
Yes, sir.
that tells you who you thought was getting tattoos back then.
Do what?
That tells you that the people who were getting tattoos back then, he obviously thought were demon possessed.
Yeah, yeah. Must have. A book called Everything You Need to Know About the Dangers of Tattooing and Body Piercing, page 15, quote, Burmese tattooing has been associated with religion for thousands of years. Tattooing among indigenous Northern American groups, including the Arapaho, Mojave, Cree, and Inuit, which is Eskimos, is rooted in the spiritual realm as well. More tribal tattooing has to do with spirits. Now, the book called The Art of the Tattoo, page 76, skulls imprinted on skin abound. Give me the next thing there. Now that is an American with his whole back tattooed. There's a bunch of skulls over there. There's a bunch of crosses there. You can't see it from the light. Down here's a cemetery. See those gravestone, headstones there? One of them has a cross on it. These are gorgons. You know what a gorgon is? Anybody know?
Demon?
How about Medusa? Anybody know what Medusa was in Greek mythology? She didn't have hair. She had snakes coming out the top of her head. That's what those are. These are snakes coming down here, both of these. Looks like a devil face. And this is the weirdest thing here. You can't tell, but that little square right there is tattooed on, okay? It's a flap of skin supposedly pulled down here, and that's somebody's eyeball looking through that hole. Weird stuff.
But Tabb, is that flame coming out down the bottom and people screaming?
Uh,
On the left is flame, and on the right they're screaming.
oh, this guy here?
Yes, and on the left.
Yeah, this, I guess, I don't know. I blew that thing up, tried to see what all that stuff was. Some of it's really strange, you don't know what it is. Okay, give me the next one, Carl. Now this is really a strange, now what I quoted you there out of The Art of Tattoo, skulls abound and depictions of the Grim Reaper are commonly seen. Those are skulls. You've got 7, 3 on each side, this big one. Can't see it well, there's his backbone. It's got a good backbone anyway. That's supposed to be Jesus. His nose is the cross with Jesus hanging on the cross.
Whoa.
I don't know why there'd be that association with this, except it's emblematic of death. He's on the cross there, and so forth. You can't really see it there, but this is an upside-down creature. His head is there, his mouth is wide open, he's screaming, he's got wings and tail, some sort of demonic thing with a man's head. That's a head upside down there, just all sorts of weird stuff in there. Crazy, crazy stuff. At least the owner thereof doesn't have to look at it every day. It's on his back. Let me finish this quote. Skulls abound and depictions of the Grim Reaper are commonly seen. These images, indelibly marked on the skin, reflect uncertainty about the future and sublimate the pervasive fear of the unknown. Possibly at the same time, to wear a death's figure on one's body may be an invocation of whatever undefinable forces of nature and the cosmos that exist in an attempt to protect the wearer from such a fate. End quote. Already pointed out to you that's what some of those tribal tattoos are, to protect the individual in the tribe from evil spirits. And that's what it's saying those kind of things are. So all of these quotes document the history of tattoos, the culture of it, and that they have some spiritual or religious or mystical purpose. Page 22 of that same book, The Art of the Tattoo, quote, tattooing is much more likely in view of its subsequent development to have had a mystical significance. The red ochre, red pigment paint, the red ochre carrying an association with blood and life, end quote. You see a lot of red in some people's tattoos. My wife saw a guy, we both saw him, but at a flea market 2 or 3 years ago, had reds, I forgot what the picture was, but it was three-dimensional, sticking out from his arm about that far. She goes over and asks him, she said, how do they make that tattoo three-dimensional? He said, it's not the tattoo. He said, I'm allergic to the ink, and I can't do anything about it. Good.
Amen.
Shouldn't put it there to start with. Another quote from that same book, quote, in association with sun worship, megalithic building, ear piercing, and serpent worship. What's the devil? Worship the devil. Megalithic building. Somebody give me an example of that. You ever heard of Stonehenge in Britain? Megalithic, giant stones. Tied in with sun worship and serpent worship, and saying tattooing is tied in with all that. Quote on page 24. These marks, the tattoos, are believed to be associated with the worship of the sun goddess Neith. Neith was the Egyptian goddess whose son was Ra, the sun god. So it's associated with the worship of Egyptian gods and goddesses. Page 63, quote, primitive tribes are certainly convinced that the spirits, having escaped from the body at death, retained a replica of its earthly tenement. They therefore use tattoo marks as a means of identification in the next world and a passport to future happiness. So, the only way you recognize your friend when you get to heaven is by his tattoo. Crazy stuff. Page 63. The Mojave Indians in the lower Colorado instituted chin tattooing for both sexes because it was believed that a kind of judge, great father, great white father, all business, capital J, a kind of judge looks over each one that comes to Silade, which is the land of the dead for those Indians. And if a man doesn't have the marks on his face, the judge sends him down where the desert rats are, in a quote. So he's got to have a tattoo to get into heaven, according to that religious belief. Page 63. Among other Indian tribes, there was a conviction that on the journey heavenwards to the many lodges, they would be stopped by an old woman and examined for the presence of tattoo marks on the forehead, chin, or wrist. If absent, the luckless warrior would be pushed off a dizzy height to fall back to earth with no hope of ever gaining readmittance to the spirit world, end of quote. So they had to do that in order to get into their idea of heaven, religious again. Another quote, Hindus in Bengal believed that without tattoos, parents would not be able to recognize their children in the next world, end of quote. So, parent, go get your kids tattooed so you'll be sure to find them when you get to heaven. Isn't this stuff crazy?
Amen.
On page 64, quote, then there is the ghastly fate of the untattooed Phrygian, a woman struck down by the souls of her own sex and without further ado served up as food for the gods, end of quote. What that says is, in her tribe, women that have died before her, they're in their whatever their belief of heaven was, and if she didn't get any tattoos and she died, then those women that are already there see she had no tattoos, and they would kill her and feed her to the gods.
That's
Yeah. Every pagan concept of heaven, including Islam, is horrid.
Amen.
Page 64, quote, the worship of the sun god Baal, interesting, that finally got in there, involved the marking of the hands, tattoos on the hands, with a divine token in a mystic attempt to acquire strength, end of quote. Page 13 there's a survey and gives statistics, lists the responses to the survey, which was asking for reasons why people get a tattoo. The number 2 reason that was given, quote, to secure a place in heaven. Now, supposedly that survey was answered by logical people, sane people, secure a place in heaven. The 5th answer was to propitiate malignant spirits at the time of death. Anybody want to explain that? Propitiate, pacify, satisfy, malignant spirits, bad spirits at the time of death, so that when you die, the bad spirits won't come get you. The 6th reason, to acquire special characteristics through totemism and ancestor worship. totemism is defined as a mystical relationship between a person or a group and a totem. You know what a totem is? Eskimos, totem poles, all that stuff. Those poles represent a clan or a family that has the gods of the clan on there and so forth. And it involves ancestor worship. Same thing still going on in China today. Used to go on in Japan, probably still does. The Eskimos did that. A lot of the pagan groups did that kind of stuff. And so one of the reasons for getting a tattoo was it puts you in touch with your dead ancestors, ancestor worship. So, give you a couple more things and we'll quit for tonight.
Brother Ted,
Yes, sir?
what group of people the Eskimos connected with, like they come from the continent of Europe?
Yeah, they're Indians. No, from Asia. They're Indians. Just like Apaches down in Colorado or Arizona. Indians. Native Americans. I am a Native American.
Did they have anything to do
My
with?
family's been on this continent since 1609. That makes me a Native American.
Or
Yes,
did
sir.
y'all come across the Bering Strait?
They had to, yeah.
And the reason that's where they came from?
They had to come that way, yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't know if they had to. I don't know. Polynesians, they found evidence of Polynesians in the western area of South America, coming 1,000 miles from those islands out there on their little dugouts. So, who knows? Anyway. And Vikings on this side of America. Okay, so this Dr. Hamday, I quoted a few minutes ago, he's considered to be the greatest tattooist historian and researcher that's ever lived. And over in his writings, he talks about the religious, the pagan elements of tattooing and the rituals involved with it and so forth. So if anybody's serious and honest and open-minded and read up on this stuff, you got to say, I don't want that. It's demonic, it's satanic, so I don't want anything like that. Who's the greatest enemy of tattoos? His name is Jesus.
Christ.
Amen.
He's the one that said, don't cut your skin and make no marks upon thy flesh. And so because of that, and missionaries could verify this and throughout history, when people in pagan tribes, wherever they tattooed and stuff like that, when they got converted, without any exception, according to the missionaries, they stopped their tattooing rituals. They quit doing it. Why? Because they are not like today's disobedient Christians.
Amen.
We're going to do what they want regardless of what God says about it. What we got today in LLC, we got Christians converting to paganism. Instead of pagans converting to Christianity. I remember Dr. Ruckman said this, I heard him say this about 45 years ago. He said, it's either back to the Bible or back to the jungle. And America's going back to the jungle. You're right.
Amen.
In fact, it's already there. The only thing is Tarzan hasn't showed up yet, but we're back in the jungle.
Amen.
Amen. Let me just give you another couple more quotes. I want to get through with these quotes so we can move on with this study. The book, The Body Art Book, Complete Illustrated Guide to Tattoos, says on page 9, quote, just as occurred in other cultures with tattoo traditions, when these pagan tribes were converted to the Christian religion, their spiritual and cultural rites, which included tattooing, piercing, and scarification, were outlawed, end of quote. That's a book written by a pro-tattooist. It says wherever Christianity showed up, they outlawed tattooing. And of course, that person would be against Christianity, right? Sure. So when Jesus enters, the tattoos go.
Amen.
Right.
The trouble is, people are stuck with them, and when they get tired of them, now that can be removed today, but they say it's probably a more painful operation than putting them on there to start with. They remove them with laser. My wife told somebody one time, some teenage girl or somebody, young woman, tattoos all over her arm. She said basically, what are you gonna think when those tattoos are hanging down like this? And that picture's just all out of distorted. Amen. They don't think ahead, do they? Let me see.
Seems like that this is some example of the devil attacking everything that has to do with Christ.
Well, he always has, yes, sir. Tattoo history of source book, page 101. Whenever missionaries encountered tattooing, they eradicated it, end of quote. The body art book, page 11, quote, while these and other body modifications continue to be practiced underground as a way for non-Christian people to identify each other, God forbid you got caught and your mark was revealed, end of quote. Talking about when Christianity took over a tribe or an area or something like that, and some of them kept practicing it, trying to keep it secret. Now, some Christians, we probably all know some, got tattoos before they got saved. Lenny Hasbrook, one of my favorite friends way back, is dead now. Most of y'all probably remember him. He had tattoos he got when he was in the Navy before he ever got saved. You never would have seen him with his sleeves rolled up. Why? He was ashamed of them. Couldn't do nothing about them, so he kept them covered. And so that's the case with a lot of Christians who have them. They got them when they were young, didn't have any sense, and they try to keep them covered up. But that's not the way it is with pagans. They want everybody to see them.
Amen.
Tattoo history, a source book, page 99, quote, when Cortez and his conquistadors arrived on the coast of Mexico in 1519, they were horrified to discover that natives not only worshiped devils in the form of statues and idols. Why would Cortez have been horrified? His church had been doing that for hundreds of years. He was a Catholic. But now listen, he was horrified to discover that natives not only worshiped devils in the form of statues and idols, but also had somehow managed to imprint indelible images of these idols on their skin. The Spaniards, who had never heard of tattooing, recognized it at once as the work of Satan, which is what it is. Goes on to say the Spaniards well, I need to read that later. I'll tell you what Christian, so-called Christians who have tattoos call it. They call it markings for Jesus, the marks of Jesus on them. And so just like pagan Christians accept Christmas trees and Easter eggs and all that stuff, they accept pagan tattoos and think it makes them more Christ-like, closer to the Lord because they got a picture of Jesus. You won't believe some of the so-called Christian tattoos. I'm going to show you some of them before we're over with. Not tonight, but it's just crazy what they do. The body art book, page 29. These tattoos act as protective and empowering talismans for the wearer. Talisman is a good luck charm. There are even some body artists who perform ritual tattoos, some body artists today who perform ritual tattoos, piercing, brandings. Did you know people get branded these days?
Oh, yeah.
Willingly? And cuttings. They may suggest you consult your astrological chart to pick the right time to get your body art. They will burn incense and light candles while they're tattooing you, end of quote. He's talking about what goes on in some tattoo parlors today. In Tattoo, the Exotic Art of Skin Decoration, page 75, quote, some tattooists in the West, that's us, are, present tense, experimenting with ritual tattooing. This method of working incorporates doing a ritual to create a sacred space in the area where the tattoo is positioned. Often incense is burned and the gods invited to bless the proceedings, end of quote. Look at 1 Corinthians chapter 10. 1 Corinthians chapter 10. First Corinthians 10, verse 20. But I say that the things which the Gentiles sacrifice, they sacrifice to devils and not to God. And I would not that you should have fellowship with devils. How many of those quotes did I read where they talk about spanning from this world to the next and for spirit beings to get in, all that stuff? I would not that you have fellowship with devils. You cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of devils. You cannot be partaker of the Lord's table and of the table of devils. Do we provoke the Lord to jealousy? Are we stronger than He? You might not see the connection, but those verses condemn tattooing as well as other things. Cup of devils, what's it about? It's about blood. It's about bloodletting. It's also about blood drinking. Remember I read you sometimes the shaman licks the blood off of the tattoo he's making? You all remember me reading that just a minute?
Sir.
Some of the American tattooists do the same thing in the tattoo parlors downtown. They lick the blood off. Why? It's a religious ritual. And the Lord says, you're not supposed to have anything to do with the cup of devils. You can't be a partaker of the Lord's table, communion, and of the table of devils. Where does that put a guy that's covered with tattoos who calls himself a Christian, goes to church when it's time for communion? Can't participate as far as God's concerned. Yes, sir.
Must be a lot of disease associated with that.
Hepatitis 3 is common among tattooed people. Yeah. All right, any comments on it there? Yes, sir.
I know a girl